So starting a new parak now, sixth parak, I think, and Samachir Medbeis, Mitzias Isha. So at the beginning, the Gemara is going to say we had it already before, but it repeats it now. Mitzias Isha Umas Yadel Bala. If a woman's fine things and earnings go to the husband, that means that the wife not automatically does everything that she owned belong to the husband. That's not so. By an Eved, it's so. Let's say if you own a slave, so then whatever Mashkan ever turn around. But by your wife, it's not like that. But are certain earned monies that do go to the husband. And the Gemara said before why they made each takana, what the reason is for each one. If she finds something, it goes to the husband. Ma'asiyah also, if she earns money, also goes to the husband. And it's his. The Gemara says that he supports her. And also the Gemara spoke about how come the Gemara is going to speak. We didn't speak yet, but it's going to be eventually why he gets her findings. So findings and earnings go to the husband. Yushasa, what if she has an estate, for instance, that she inherited something, she inherited property. So does it go to the husband? No, that's hers. But whenever it's hers, there's a halacha that he's eligible to have the profits of that carrion, of that principal. So the principal stays her, but he gets the profits. So what do they do? He's, as long as she's alive, so then he does get the produce. Means whatever it's a field, whatever produces, or it's a house, and he get rent. So then he gets the profits, but it still belongs to her. And if she dies, so then he yashins her. So it says b'chayah, that means as long as she's alive, so then he's getting the payers, but she owns it. If she dies, so then he gets that also. That the Mishnah doesn't say, but it just says b'chayah. So far we spoke about findings and earnings, and also about properties that she owns. For example, Yerusha. Now the next point is Boshes and Pagam, Boshes Pagama. So that's all kinds of nezek. When a person gets damaged, so then there are payments to pay. So it talks about Boshes and Pagam. Boshes means the embarrassment that was caused her, and the person who embarrassed her, that's called also Pagam, means how much the nezek, the damages, whatever damages are paid. So someone damaged a woman, so who does the money go to? He paid the one who has to pay for the Boshes and Pagam. Who does the money go to? So Tanakama says again, Shalah belongs to her. If it belongs to her, so then they'll also translate it into profits. Whatever money she got, so then they translate that into some kind of a principle that should be able to generate money, and that profit is going to go to the husband also. But the reader argues, some of it goes to him. Means that the nezek and the boshes, the damages and boshes, is partially his, because the reason is because it's husband and wife are so much that when she's damaged, so it's him that was damaged, and when she's embarrassed, it's also her. So that is some kind of. It's not a question of owning. It's not owning. It's how much they're one, and how much each. There are two halves of a whole. Now I was going to say 2/3 and a third, whatever it might be. Not as far, but there's a unity over there. And when she is damaged, it's like he's damaged. He's suffering from that damage. And when she is embarrassed. That's what it says. It says it depends. If it's a mum if somebody, the nezek, let's say the nezek was something which was the seiseh. Taisha says it means if it was in a place where it's not noticeable to people. So
where is it on the screen?
It's man shebeseiseh. Then the halacha is then he gets 2/3 of the damages and of the shame of the embarrassment, and she gets 1/3. The payment is divided into 2/3 and a third. He gets 2/3, she gets 1. That right way. There's a case of Mansha B'Seiser. So then the Allah is going to be she gets 2/3 and he gets 1/3. If it was a damage and embarrassment that was openly, he gets 1/3. He's suffering more than she does in the mum shebagoli. If something which was open, noticeable to people, Taisha says either that if she has a that her finger was cut off, her hand was cut off, so he suffers more than she does. That's how the Gemara was looking at it. That's what the Gemara was going to explain, that the husband and wife, that you see, the Gemara is always going to be the sugya, what we talk about always, that the husband and wife are one. They're not just being mistader with each other, but they're a unity. And this unity, how much part of that unity is being affected by the boshes and the bagam? Tanakama says it all belongs to her. Buddha says that he's suffering, and therefore he gets part of it. And it depends if it's pseis or bagoloi, how much is the proportion of each one's suffering. So if it's Beseisa, then she's suffering more, and if it's Begola, he's suffering more.
What's an example of Seisa?
If it would be a mumma that is not noticeable in the public, it's under the clothing. It's a blemish, on her body.
On her body.
He also suffers from that.
But she suffers double.
Bisman Sheba says that she's suffering, right? She's suffering double. So she gets 2/3, he gets 1/3. If it's Begoli, so then he gets 2/3 and she gets 1.
Why should she suffer more the Seder than the Dalit?
Why? It means why is it? It affects him more. Affects him more.
Well, that I understand, but it seems to also be, if you look at her, it would give more, the Mishnah would be saying, the Seder Lash
Lakim below echad. That she's suffering more than him.
Focus on Lash,
Right.
only on her.
Yes.
And in Gilui,
Right.
law is 1.
Right.
So in Gilui, she gets less.
Right. Because you're looking in proportion to the husband. It's true. If it will be
Okay.
a woman that's not married, so then she gets the whole thing. And any. But here, how much of that shame or embarrassment or suffer or the devaluation, whatever, how much does that affect him and her?
Seems unfair to her because if she's not less embarrassed by Gilui,
So you see, right? So the point is that in all these Gemaras, that's a nice point. That in all these Gemaras, you don't say that she gets paid in full, and he also gets paid because he also was embarrassed. That's surely not going to be. Tysus points it out that whatever is going to be divided because they're. If you look at them as a one, if you look at them as a unit, so then within this unit, how much is each one suffering? But it's true that you don't say that she is a person on her own and she gets a whole payment, and then he's also being affected, so he also should get paid more. You're not going to pay 125%. You're not going to do that. The point is because they're one, and that's divided proportionately within the person. You could say a person on his own. So when he has a certain damage, which part of him is being damaged? Which part of him? So here we're talking about within the person. That's called husband-wife unit. Which part is being suffering more?
This is in a happy marriage, right?
All marriages are supposed to be like this. But what do you mean to say?
Nobody is marad and nobody's
Yeah.
divorced.
Yes. Right.
Okay, so I would think that because he's more affected by external affected, like in society, he's the one that's out there and it hurts him more that this thing is really weak. And when it's internal, she's suffering more even though people don't see it, and she knows like so well.
I could have thought that the husband is suffering, if it much it means that in intimacy, so he's also losing out. He's losing out from the intimacy and the fact that she has a womb.
Mm-hmm.
So, but no, she's suffering more. She's suffering more.
Okay.
Shalom, what do you do with the money that belongs to her? So the Mishnah said already before. Shalom, you're not saying miyad. Whatever's coming to him, so you just give it to him. Shalom, you lock up and whenever something belongs to her, so you generate money out of it in order to get payros. Like I said before, Yerusha, payros. Also, when it says according to Tanakama, also you generate money out of it. Whenever something belongs to her, so you make a principle out of it in order to be able to generate profits. And that goes to the husband. Whatever belongs to him belongs to him. So we had
Yikach behen.
Karka
for her.
Right, and that belongs to her.
Oh, with the money.
With the money.
With that money for her, and she owns that money.
That karka, right? And now, so she always, it doesn't have to be dafka karka. Maybe that's going to be a sugya later on, but you're translating it into something that could generate profit. So we spoke about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the first category was three categories. When CS the Isha Maisya, everybody goes to the husband, the findings and the earnings. Yerusha, the property that she owns, for sure belongs to her, and he gets the profits. Boshus of Agam was a machlokes. According to Tanakam, all belongs to her, and of course, she generated into profit. And Rabbi Yehuda Meseres says that the Boshus of Agam is divided with him and her, according to the proportion of how much each one suffers. So the Gemara is first bothered by the beginning opening statement. It talks about Metzia, Masiyadeha, Yerusha. We had all that already. Michael Mashmalan, we have it in the Mishnah already. It says, Tanina, it says in the side, that where was this? Afmem Vav, there was a Mishnah already before. It says, brings the whole Mishnah down. Ha'av zakai bebito b'kiddusha, b'kesa b'shtar b'biyah, zakai b'mitziasa, b'masiyadeh, b'faras nedareah, b'kabal azgita, b'ena ochel peres b'chayah, niseis yeser Allah b'aval, shabochel peres b'chayah. So that's all the Mishnah. All that was the Mishnah quoted before. And it talks about mitziyah and masiyadeh. There it talks about the father first. It says that the father is the one who's the authority over his daughter's marriage, as long as she's Ketana or Naira, that he's the one who decides if she gets married. Kesef Sharbiyah, the 3 ways of making the marriage. Zaka b'mitziyasa, if the daughter finds something, it belongs to the father. If the daughter earns something, it belongs to the father. And also the father has the right to nullify her vows, as has in Parshas Matos. and he's the one also who receives the get if she's being divorced. So he has the authority to receive the get, and he doesn't get payers. There's no such thing as a father. If the daughter owns some property, so he doesn't get the payers. Doesn't go to the father, it goes to the daughter. But if she's married, the husband has everything that the father has plus. This says that he also gets payers. So what did it say? That there's mitzia. If we would just point that out over here, that it said that there's mitzia and ma'aseh yadayim, mitziasa and ma'aseh yadayim. It says that it goes to the father, and the father and the husband gets all that also. So these point that it said in the beginning of the Mishnah that the Messias Isha and ma'aseh yadayim go to the husband. It says it already before. Also the point about the Yerusha, it says about he gets payros. It says that whatever she owns, he gets the payros. That's the Yerusha. If she owns a property, she got the Yerusha from some uncle or something, or parents. So then it says that he gets the payros. So everything was said already. What does the Mishnah keep all this introduction for? The answer is you're right. It's an introduction. It's only a lead up. First, it tells you the givens. The givens are the first categories. Messias Isha, Ma'aseh Yadeh, Yerusha. That's not a question. But the question really is Boshe Sapagam. And that's the reason why the whole Mishnah came, just to tell you this machlokas. According to the Tanakhama, it belongs to her. According to the Rebbe, it's divided proportionally between the husband and the wife.
Is there any age issues with a daughter, or she always gives?
No, only until she's 12 and a half.
Oh,
12 and a half, she has independence. Or she gets married, whichever one comes first.
Where's it the Pluto?
This is the plukta right here in the Mishnah. Has Rabbi Yehuda ben Tanakhama says Shalah. Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira says that it's divided both of them. So really, the Gemara is saying that the beginning of the Mishnah you really don't need over here. We'd be able to take all this out. This we know already from before. It could have started Bosh's Pagam, but since we're going to lead up, so it told you at the beginning get ready for this subject, which is a question. These Mitzias and Ma'aseh Yadeh and Yerusha, all that's known already. How about Bosh's Pagam? So that was a lead up to get to the subject of the Machlokas Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira and the Rabbanim. Okay, now we go back to. Let's talk about Metzia a little bit. So it says in the Gemara, one line up. Tani Tanakh made the Rava. Somebody said over a brisa to Rava. I'm sorry, I'm just got. Okay. Tani Tanakh made the Rava. Metzia Isha la'atzma. There's a Tana that argues. Amisha says that the Metzia Isha goes to the husband. The husband gets the findings. The brisa argues. The brisa says that it goes to herself. She keeps the findings. Rabbi Kiva Amalabala. According to the way it says over here, Rabbi Kiva is the Tana of our Mishnah. He's the one who says it goes to the husband. The Gemara here doesn't say why it goes to the husband. The Gemara doesn't talk about it later on. My Chavusha showed me that Sadik Vav 96 later on. It's going to say the reason is because there shouldn't be an animosity, that he's supporting her and he's taking care of her, and she's not going to be giving her findings. She finds the money and then she keeps it. So that's the Gemara later on. It doesn't talk about it, but here it seems to be a machlokas. Our Mishnah says only one opinion, but there are those that argue and say that the woman keeps her own findings. Amalei. So Rava said to the one who told him this brisa, Tani Tana Kamei, doesn't mean that a Tana doesn't. But I mean, somebody who says a brisa, it's called Tani Tana brisa. He said over to Rava. So Rava told him it must be a mistake. Amalei, Hadafa, Nekadeha, he, Amar Rabbi Kiva La'atzma, Mitziasa Lokalshkein. The fact that he quoted Rabbi Kiva, he said that Rabbi Kiva is the author of our Mishnah. Rabbi Kiva is the one who says it goes to the husband. Rabbi has a problem that it can't be that Rabbi Kiva holds it goes to the husband, because he holds that even a woman's extra earning, we called Ma'aseh Yadeh, means her earnings, and most of Ma'aseh Yadeh mean extra earnings. We said before in the Mishnah that a woman is supposed to bring in 5 slime of a certain amount, spinning thread. That was the malacha that the woman did at home. And then most of Ma'aseh Yadeh means if she makes extra. If she makes extra. So Rabbi Kiva holds that the extra earnings that she makes, she's allowed to keep. And he's going to prove that now. And if that's true, then it can't make sense that her findings should go to her husband. It means Rabbi Kiva can't be the mandama that says that her findings go to the husband, because he holds even her extra earnings go to herself. So surely the findings is going to go to herself. That's how the Gemara sees the balance.
But I don't understand here. Where does Rabbi Kiva say that it goes to?
The Tanan. The Gemara's going to bring a proof. We don't know it yet.
Oh,
The Tanan. So first he introduces the question. If I'm going to show you, Rabbi Kiva holds that most of the Ma'aseh Yadeh, the extra earnings, Rabbi Kiva says goes to herself. And Tziyas Kolshkein says surely the findings go to herself. How do I know Rabbi Kiva holds that her extra earnings go to herself? Which her earnings to her husband. She said that that's what Shani Yosef, whatever I produce, whatever I make, my earnings, it's konam lopicha. It's a aser with a neder to your mouth, to her husband's mouth. She aser, she prohibited her her earnings, her work on her husband. So Tanakama said, it doesn't have other nullifying it because it doesn't take effect anyway, since she's obligated to the work to her husband, so she has no right to prohibit it. It's not hers; it belongs to the husband. Doesn't have to bother nullifying it. But the Rekiva says he should nullify it. The Rekiva Omer Yafer Shema Tadef Alav Yosem and Avoilo, that if she makes more than is coming to him, so it will become Maser. True, I agree to you, Tanaka, that whatever she's meshubit, whatever she's obligated to the husband, she can't. Then it's not necessary to nullify that vow. But she might make extra, and the extra is not coming to the husband. She does have a right; she has jurisdiction over it, and she could prohibit it. So therefore, if he wants to make sure that it should, the nether shouldn't take effect, he should nullify it. So what do you see? That Rabbi Kiva holds that the extra earnings go to herself. So that doesn't make sense. I just proved now that the extra earnings go to herself, according to Rabbi Kiva. So how could you say that the findings go to the husband? If anything, it's closer to earnings. Earnings we know go to the husband. And even the extra earnings, which is very close, Rabbi Kiva says it goes to herself. So findings is even further than that. So surely it goes to herself.
Her earnings are just the minimum earnings.
Right. That's what the Rabbi Kiva is differentiating, the minimum earnings and the extra.
Minimum he's entitled to.
Right. The five slum of spinning, it goes to the husband. And if there's extra, Rabbi Kiva keeps it for herself. She's over time, extra, and she makes more thread, and surely the Matzah she's allowed to keep. That's.
I don't understand the logic when you differentiate her earnings from finding something. Why is it a kol shekain?
I think because we start with the earnings. Earnings we know that he keeps,
Okay.
and then she works to make more. So that is removed from the husband. That's what she keeps. And findings is even further removed from his because his cost starts with the earnings. Is findings similar to earnings to say that also it should belong to him? Even the extra earnings don't belong to him. It means the findings you don't earn. Yeah, so it's very far removed from earnings, and even extra earnings, which is very close to earnings, also goes to her. So surely the findings, which is very far removed from earnings.
Her work is her work. You could see a smart for her to keep the extra part of her work. She worked for it, and she just got lucky and found something. She didn't do anything, so she
Maybe that's go to
both of them. I don't know.
I understand. It seems that the Gemara is starting that the only thing we know that the husband gets is the earnings. That's the given. So whatever's similar to that would be more reason that it should go to him. And if not, there was no takana on it, so it should be further. That's what it seems, but I'm not saying it doesn't need more investigation. That's the Gemara's kasha. So Rava said that it can't be. The Brisa you quoted can't be. Ella Epoch. It must be that you should switch around the Brisa. The Brisa was misquoted, means who said what? You quoted it that the Tanakhama says, just to go back to the end, the last line before, the bottom line. Tana, he said that la'atzma. Tanakama says she keeps it. Rabbi Kiva says it goes to the husband. So Rabbi said it can't be. We have to switch it around. Rabbi Kiva is the one who says it goes to herself. Tanakama is the one who says it goes to the husband. That's how he says. Now, Ella Epoch, you must switch it around. Where are we? Ella Epoch, right? The fifth line. Rabbi Kiva is the one who says she keeps it, and that's in line with what he says that the extra earnings goes to herself. So too do the findings go to herself. Tanakama, our Mishnah, like Tanakama, that also goes to the husband, and surely we'll say that the extra earnings also go to the husband. Even the findings go to the husband. That's the sword that Gemara is using now. That findings is more reason it should go to how's it go? That it's more reasonable that the findings that's very far removed surely should go to herself. And even that, the Tanakhama says that it goes to her husband. So surely the extra earnings, the Kiva's other extreme, that the extra earnings go to herself, and surely the findings. The Gemara says that the kasha is not a kasha, your problem is not a problem. Rabbi Yosef Rabin Amar Rabbi Yochanan Ba'adafa Shalo De'atchak Lo Yamalo Pligi De Baal Havi Ki Pligi Ba'adafa Shal De'atchak Tanakama Sava La Bala Rabbi Kiva Sava Lasma. Rabbi Yochanan came. Rabin is quoted Rabbi Yochanan as saying that everyone agrees that some of the extra earnings go to the husband. If extra earnings, she didn't have to work too much. She had extra earnings, but she didn't have to be dochak herself. She didn't push too much. It wasn't such a difficult extra earning. So then everybody holds that the husband gets it. It means that he's saying that Rabbi should not be excited about this kasha. That findings is similar to Shalom De'atchak. The only time Rabbi Kiva said that the extra earnings go to herself is only when she had to work very hard. That's what Tanakama says. It also goes to the husband, and Rabbi Kiva says that she could keep. But findings, the Gemara thinks that the findings is considered something which was not any work, and therefore Rabbi Akiva also can hold that it goes to the husband. Like there's no kasha. That findings is like extra earnings with difficulty. So the Gemara doesn't say why. And that's spoke to Rabbi Akiva Rabbanan.
How much difficulty is difficult? If she's spinning, so to do
Extra spinning.
So a little more spinning is not a problem.
Yeah, you
To
call it-
do 10 times the spinning, or is something else?
Staying up late at night, Rashi talks about like working overtime. That maybe the
Or
Rosh says
losing
that
sleep over it.
it's working very difficult. She's exerting herself, over exerting herself. So that's where the machlokes is. But regular, extra, everybody says it goes to the husband. And then the Gemara says, but Papa says no. Rabba's kasha was a kasha because a finding is like working hard. So that's the question. Why is finding like working hard? So we would say when you find something else walking down the street, you find something. Rashi is trying to answer this problem. Rashi says that sometimes findings involves a lot of work. He gives a few examples that if fish were came on shore, like there was over a tide, whatever, then it went back. You have to go to collect it. It's not that it doesn't involve work. Rashi gives a few examples of findings that involve work. He also
have
yes.
to do with maybe looking for the owner. You're not
No,
sure
no,
if it's
talking about findings where you keep it at the end.
You keep it at the end, but
So the
process of
fact they have to try to give it back, that's a mitzvah Shabbos Aveda, but the findings that you're allowed to keep. So did it come with work? The fact you have to work to do a mitzvah to try to get it back to the owner,
That's
that
not
wouldn't
work.
be the work that she gets the findings. We're talking about in order to keep the findings. So that's what so Rashi's trying to answer that question. I heard another pshat possibility that not that how much work is involved, but it's more removed from the earnings, not because you have to work. One way of being removed from the earnings is when you have to work very hard, overexerting very much. So that's considered removed from the halach of earnings. And findings also has no connection. Maybe that's what Mike meant before, that there's no connection between there's less connection between the findings and the earnings. And therefore, even though the earnings go to the husband, the extra earnings also go to the husband. If you have to exert yourself a lot, then it's further removed, then that goes to herself. And
No, that's
maybe it's opposite of what Mike was saying.
Tanakama said
and
that,
We're trying to explain why Rabba's kasha would be a kasha, that according to Rabbi Akiva, it surely should go to herself.
to Rabbi Akiva.
Rabbi Akiva, right. He's backing up Rabba's kasha. The one is trying to put down Rabba's kasha, no problem. That extra earnings, everybody holds it goes to the husband, only difficult extra earnings. That's what Rabbi Akiva says. And Papa is saying that findings is equal to the level of difficult extra earnings. So that needs some explanation, but the Mara ends off that Rapapa, Rava, they're saying that you have to change Rabbi Akiva, you have to change Rabbi Akiva in the Brisa. Rabbi Akiva is gonna not be the one who says it goes to the husband. He's the one who says it goes to herself. The same way he holds that difficult extra findings go to herself, so too findings also go to herself. And the Tanakama argues that's going to be our Mishnah, that findings go to the husband. The mice we pass on like our Mishnah, that the findings go to the husband. New Gemara, Boira Papa. Seems to be a New Gemara. There might be some talk about that. Boira Papa. Boira Papa. Asisa lo shtayim b'vasachas ma'u. She didn't stay overtime to work more, but she did two things at the same time. What is that considered? Just one more line.
She made for him meaning things that he's going to go to him.
No, that's the question. Who does it go to? She
What's
worked.
the law?
She worked two things. That's going to be the question. Who does it go to? She was working.
I
She was
thought the law.
she was spinning thread. She was spinning thread, but she knew how to spin with both hands. She was working, but the question, the
The
us
law is
low is
the
not
it
going.
here.
That's only what she's doing. It doesn't say who it goes to. Now we're going to ask who does it go to?
The law is the it.
No, it means him. It means she made for him, but maybe she gets the money. You're
She
right.
made for him. Okay,
It would be
take-
nice to erase the word. You're right. It would be nice that the word doesn't mean that she's going for him because that's does go to him or does go to her. But the point is she produced us. If you want the word, us time b'vasachas. She did two things at the same. Is that considered? We'll see in a second. What is that considered? Another question. How about she did a couple of things at the same time? So take it. The Gemara doesn't know. So there are two ways to learn the Gemara. Either it's talking about is that considered normal work or is that extra work? According to Rabbi Akiva said a difference about the normal work and the extra work.
I should pass this on.
What's the difference if it's time? So the possibility is that maybe only working overtime, that's considered the past
That's why
norm.
Rashi maybe said that.
About the time. I'm not sure if it was Rush, I forgot who that was.
Okay.
And the two shot the movie, others learned that the question is that so far we said that according to Rabbanan, there's no difference called the Chak, even if you have to work, you have to exert yourself. Also to the husband, her. So that's what we said so far, that the earnings certainly go to him, even the extra earnings also go to him, and the difficult extra earnings was Machlokas Rabbi Akiva and Rabbanan. So the Gemara is asking, one side is to say, the Gemara is asking, is this considered extra difficult work or not?
Wouldn't it depend on if it's difficult?
How so one way to learn the Gemara is this talking about, is that considered difficult or very difficult?
How do you define difficult? If it's overtime, then difficult.
Overtime is short, and then the question is, so the rest brings down two pshatim over here. What the Gemara's question was it going in Rabbi Akiva, who talks about extra difficult? Is this considered extra difficult? Or the other possibility is going according to Rabbanan, is it considered the norm? The Rabbanan, what do Rabbanan say? That everything goes. It could be even according to Rabbanan, this is so difficult that even though they held that extra difficult, like we said, difficult extra earnings, Rabbanan still say it goes to the husband. Maybe over here, everybody will agree that it goes to herself. There's one way to learn the Gemara. The Gemara is going to Rabbi Akiva. It's considered extra difficult or not? Or is it considered difficult? He talks about, I said the word extra is getting me confused. Extra means extra money. And you can talk extra difficult. That's that. So Rabbi Akiva said the extra money goes to her, but if it's difficult extra money, so then Rabbi Akiva said it goes to her. And the Gemara is talking about, is this the category of Rabbi Akiva or not? Is it considered difficult? The other pshat is to say that for sure this is difficult, and Rabbi Akiva surely would say that it goes to her. But the Rabbanan say that even the difficult money also goes to him. Is this like so far out of the ballpark that she's doing 2 times the things done? Maybe even the Rabbanan will agree it goes to her. Maybe the Rabbanan will say that this maybe it goes to her.
To her.
And that the Gemara leaves as a question. Okay, that's sugya. Bosh Tepakama, next sugya. Bosh Tepakama, we said that according to the Tanakama goes to her. The nezek and the shame, that payment goes to her. And Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira said that it's divided because he also has a part in it. And the whole Gemara is going to be talking about the Yehuda ben Beseira. Why does he have any right to that money? The first Gemara, but I said at the Pshat and Mishnah that they're considered one unit. They're Ishta Kegufo. The Gemara doesn't know that till the end of the sugya. That's going to be the punchline. But we don't know that yet. And the Gemara is asking, why should he get money? Because his wife was embarrassed. It doesn't own her. It's not like that's because she gets the money. It's not a reason why he should get it. That's the whole Mishnah. Some monies go to her. Some monies go, and that to make profit, he gets the profit out of it. And some goes to him, and he keeps it. So why should he get any of the money? If somebody shamed somebody's horse, so you're going to give the owner money for the shame of his horse. So the Gemara says first, that's not a question. It's just about Boshes, the horse doesn't get shamed. If you kick the horse, it doesn't get shamed. So there's nothing to pay in the first place. So that's not a good question. The Gemara is just leading up to find the case. Ella, if you spat at somebody's garment, do you have to pay? You have to pay? Even that you don't have to pay. You might say yes. But if somebody spat at somebody and it came onto his body, that's what the Gemara is going to talk about. He gave a bow that it touched him, the saliva touched him. Or if he uncovered a woman's head covering, or he took off somebody's garment. All these ways of shaming somebody. He has to pay him a lot of money, because if shaming somebody is a lot of that's worth a lot of money. But that's the Mishnah, and Papa said about that. When it says he bow, that the saliva touched him, it's only came onto his skin. But it came onto his clothing, he's pater, even though it's also a kind of a shame. But you didn't do it directly to him. So if you didn't, that's Papa says so. Right. Papa's being medayik, and he says bow. But if it would have come onto his beggar, he'd be pater. The one who spat at somebody's clothing is pater because you didn't do it directly to him. So the more is that, yes.
But the person does experience shame or doesn't? Or
so I think that he experiences shame, but that's not what you're chayim for. I think maybe it would help the Gemara to just explain that if somebody insults somebody, so he doesn't pay for it. it means, of course, he's going to burn in Gehenna. And it says even sometimes he loses his whole portion of Olam Haba. But it's much paying if he just insulted him and made fun of him. That's not what Boshas is. So here it says that if he didn't spit onto his skin, even though it went onto his clothing, and it could be that it was embarrassed from it, but he doesn't pay for that. Maybe. I'm not sure that's what the Gemara means. And that's the Gemara's kasha. Why should he pay? Why should he get paid for the shame that was done to his wife? If it was done to his garment, he doesn't get paid for that. The Gemara says, big though, they take the gifts of big though, less lazy lusa, ishto is lazy lusa. First, the Gemara says no. The Gemara seems to say that when someone spits on somebody's garment, he doesn't get shamed. A little different than I'm saying, not because it's not direct, but he doesn't get shamed from when someone spits at his clothing, only when someone spits at himself. But by his wife, he does get shamed. They changed the gears here to lay. It's lazy lusa, not law. Ishto, of course, she's shamed, but the point is, they have to change the gears. It's a bit gears over here. Ishto, it's lazy lusa. So the Gemara is trying to support that it makes sense that he should get paid for the shame that was done to his wife. But the Gemara says it's not true. When a relative gets shamed, you don't give reimbursement to the relatives who are embarrassed because of their relative. And why is a husband different than any relative? If there be somebody that the whole family, Ani ben Tova means that is a rich person that became poor. And for the level of being poor, he's not embarrassed. But everybody else, the whole family is embarrassed. And if somebody's going to insult him, they're the ones who are going to be embarrassed. The family is embarrassed of their relative. Somebody shamed somebody who he himself didn't get shamed from it, but the rest of the family does. Means on his level, it wasn't considered an insult, but he's aristocratic. That's what I was asking. You pay to the family because they insulted, they shamed a relative of theirs. So what's the difference in a husband? When a wife was insulted, why should you pay the husband?
Another example, someone embarrasses, let's say, an 8-year-old child. So if the kid's not embarrassed,
very
the
good.
parents are embarrassed.
Right, very good. That would be an example. Unless you say that the child is not embarrassed, there was no embarrassment done. But you're saying that the child is not embarrassed, but the parents were embarrassed. So that's a good example.
Would Ben Tuvi means that they're rich?
It means that only Ben Tova means that he's from a family that they're all rich, and he became poor. So he doesn't have embarrassment, but they do. You have to pay them. What does it mean to ask? Why is a wife different than any relative? And here goes the punchline. Over there, it's not the same person. It's a relative, but it's not you. But a husband and a wife is one. And therefore, when somebody shames the wife, they're shaming him. When someone damages the wife, they're damaging him. I think it's a big yesod, mamash a big yesod, that a husband and wife are one.
That's the famous when it's quite
Our foot hurts us.
Her foot hurts us.
No.
At least that.
Yaakov said,
Our foot hurts us.
Okay. Okay. That was a sugya about the payments of Bosh Tzibagim. Next Mishnah. Posek mos lachasana. Somebody, what's the good word for posek? You have a translation over there? A posek. It means that he obligates, something. Pledges. Okay. Somebody pledges money to his son-in-law. And then the son-in-law died, umes. And now she's falling to the Yavam, to the brother. I think Rashi talks about that it was only Erison, and he's saying, I'm not going to get married until you give the dowry that you pledged. So the husband might say that, but here it's going to talk about that the Yavam does not. Another case you can say is that it's after the Nisuin, and the husband and the father says, I never pledged to give to you. So you could say different than Rashi, but yeah, he did. I said I pledged to this husband. He died, and now you're going to be the husband. I never meant you. So that's what it says. He could say, I agree to give it to your brother. He was whatever reason, he's a good guy, whatever it is. But to you, I never said. And that's the.
He's like, literally makes it impossible. I'm not interested. I don't like you.
I think the word I hear, but I think that means I don't want.
Okay.
If what I said that it doesn't mean Yeah. But the point over here is that I don't want. Yeah. I don't want it.
It wouldn't go to husband's family.
Why should it go to his?
It's talking about going to his brother, but If he actually gave it to his family.
If he had it already, then it's right. Even Yarshans, the Yavam, we don't want Yavam over here. The Yavam means have no children, and therefore the husband's brother is marrying the sister-in-law. So if he would have had the money already, then he keeps it, and he's the one who Yarshans it. But here he didn't get it, and the father-in-law doesn't want to give it. The mother, that's what he's saying. I never pledged it. I pledged to give it to my daughter's husband, who was not you. Now you're taking over to be the husband, but I didn't mean you. So I never pledged to give it to you. So it doesn't have to.
The day after, if you really gave it to him the day after he died.
Right. No,
No,
but once he said it's his already, he gave it to him and it's his, and now he died, and now the brother's going to Yarshin. The rest of the Mishnah, it's like a new Mishnah now. Really should be a new Mishnah. The printer put it all together, but it's a new Mishnah. But let's say outside, why do we say that the woman brings in a dowry? The way we had a couple of times already. Next thing that the woman brings in whatever dowry she's bringing in, and the husband, it's evaluated how much it's worth. Either it's money, then you don't have to evaluate it, or it's going to be estate, and it has to be evaluated. And then the husband in the ksuba, he's obligates himself that if he ever divorces her, or if he dies, so he's going to pay her that amount. That's part of the ksuba. Besides the 200 zuz, that is the ksuba. Also, there's nedunya. That's what it says in the ksuba. There's a Kesuvta the Tosefta the Nedunya Dain. When you hear the ksuba talking, so Nedunya means that the money that she brought in, which is probably called a dowry, that's what the woman. So he accepts it upon himself as is evaluated, that if he ever divorces her or dies, so he's going to give her that money, the value that she brought in, she'll get it back. And the Mishnah is going to say, interesting point, that there's a difference between if it's
he acquires it by marrying.
He acquires by marrying her, and then he gives it back to her. He gives it back. He doesn't have to. The more it's said in Yivam is that he doesn't have to give back the actual thing, but the value. He really owns it, and he obligates himself to pay back that, to reimburse her for that amount that she brought in. So the more going to talk about two cases. One is money. She brought in money, actual money, or she brought in a state which has to be evaluated. And the Gemara is going to say in both cases, there's not the exact number that she brought in. Does he obligate himself to pay back? First talks about money, and it says that he's obligated to give a third more. Is that called a third more? 150%. Whatever she brought in, here it says 1,000 zuz, he obligates himself 1,500 zuz. For everything she brings in, he obligates himself 50% more. Pascha lahachnis lo elef. Oh, here Rashi says the reason the Gemara doesn't say as far as I saw so far. The Rashi is
Pascha here would mean promise.
Okay. The word pasuk really means like when he said a definite thing. I don't know if it's exact translation, but when he said that's how much I'm going to give.
To cut, to set.
No, not to cut. More like, say like a psak. What is a psak? What is a psak? Right. But here it means that the decided amount. He said how much he's going to give. So here's Pascha. She said how much he's bringing in. She said how much the dowry is going to be. The Kala's father said, I'm bringing into the marriage 1,000 dinar, 1,000 zuz. So how much is he supposed to write that he's obligated to pay back? So you'd say 1,000, you bring in 1,000, that's how I'm obligated. It says no. Which is 1,500. A mana is 100. So chamesha say 1,500 is 1,500. So that's a chiddush. And it doesn't say why in the Mishnah. Rashi says the reason is because it's valuable. The value of having money to work with is valuable. You pay a lot of money to have thousands of. How much would you pay? 1,500. Of course, how long is it going to last for? Nobody knows. Maybe it's going to end up soon. Maybe it's going to last on for years and years. So, but it's evaluated that he should give 50% more. Okay, that's one halacha, that he's evaluating and obligating himself whatever she brings in, but money is worth more than the actual money. He's able to use the money and he's able to use it and generate more money. So it's worth to have income, a dowry of 1,000. It's worth that he should obligate himself. And again, no one knows if it's ever going to have, when is it going to be activated? Maybe never. Maybe he's never going to pay back. Maybe he'll pay back tomorrow. He might die. No one knows. So that's worth on the valuation of Chazal that he should pay 1,500. He should obligate himself. If he ever divorces her or dies, that he should pay back 1,500 instead of 1,000.
1.5
of what it was, right? And the Gemara is going to say a few examples. 1.5 times that she brought in.
Money today is worth more than money in the future. Is that what you're saying?
Money today is worth money today is worth more than it is.
Right, because
you could use it. Because you could use it and invest.
And in the future, you'll have to pay back more? Is that? Maybe I'm not
No,
understanding.
how much is worth it for him to have, like, if someone would say, example, someone would say, I'll give you $1,000, pay me back in 10 years. So that's worth more than $1,000. How much would it pay? How much would it be worth for you to get $1,000?
Is that what we call rivet?
It's not right. So no one's lending. It's not a loan over here. It's not a loan. It's the amount. How much is this worth? How much is this money worth? So the fact that he's gonna be able to use it for the rest of their marriage, and no one knows how long that's gonna be,
Right.
and it might even be indefinite, and they're never gonna get paid. That's also part of the cheshbon. And take all this cheshbon. How much is it worth it to him? We want him to obligate himself $1,500 in the event that he ever divorces her or dies. And now that's about
And
money.
that would be different. That's because the money's up front.
Right, she brought in money, but how about if she brings in something which has to be evaluated, like property or clothing or jewelry, whatever it might be? That's the shum. So now the Gemara is going to say opposites for it, that the people that they come to evaluate a bride's dowry, they want to make it look good for their bride, so they are, how do you say, large, generous. So they evaluate with a
Good eye.
with a good eye, and the good eye is a fifth more than it really is. So therefore, he doesn't have to obligate himself to the whole evaluation that they said, because they're exaggerating. They're exaggerating. Everyone knows they're exaggerating for the benefit of the color, and it should be nice. It should be nice, but really, everyone knows that it means really only 4/5 of what they really said. If there's something which is evaluated, who she takes off a fifth. That's something he writes in his obligation, a fifth less than what they really evaluated it for. The Mishnah speaks out, shum b'mana v'sham b'mana ein lo ela mana. If they didn't do it flowery, they didn't exaggerate, and they said how much it really is, so then of course it has to be that amount. Then he does. Then he can't deduct it. The words are a little bit difficult over here, ein lo ela mana, but Rashi and Tosfos they explain how to figure out what the words mean. But that's the idea that's being said, that if they did the proper evaluation, they didn't exaggerate, so then that's how much he's obligated to pay. The Mishnah is going to say the same thing over again in different examples. The Gemara is going to talk about why
There
he,
may be
why
one
he,
that says a mana. If it was something that is whose value is very well known,
no, if it,
everyone in the world knows that you can't exaggerate.
okay, but the point, the angle elamana really just, it sounds like he only has to pay a mana. That's not what's being said. It should have said that he has to pay the full mana. Don't deduct. That's the difficulty of these lines over here. But that's the idea. That's the,
Because really has to pay the full. It looks like he's saying he pays less.
yeah, like he only pays a mana. Doesn't only pays a mana, he pays the whole money. He wanted to pay
4/5.
right.
Yeah.
The Mishnah is going to say the same thing over again in different examples. Shum b'mana. Now it's here. Till now we spoke about what was evaluated, and then how much he has to obligate himself. There's the woman's evaluation, and then he has to pay. He has to obligate himself for fifth less. Now it goes the other way. Shum b'mana. What if they wrote how much she's going to bring? How does it go? Shum b'mana. He wrote in the Kesuvos how much he's obligating himself. He wrote how much he's obligating himself. So the point is to say that she has to bring in more. Why is more? Because the valuation again is going to be exaggerated. So a mana is 100.
So who's evaluating?
Shum mana is that he obligated himself a mana's worth. He wrote in the Kesuvos, I'm going to pay you. I'm accepting your dowry. She didn't bring anything yet. Like he's the one who's initiating. He wrote in the Kesuvos that I'm obligating myself 100 zuz for the dowry that you're bringing in. How much dowry does she have to bring in? Not 100, because 100 is going to be if it's evaluated as 100, it's a fifth more. So she has to bring in more than 100. How much does she bring in? You know, send a shloshim v'chatzela b'dina, which is 125. That's just different currencies over here. A mana is 100 zuz. Sela, each sela is 4 zuz. A dinner is the same thing as a zuz. So that's another way of saying 125. So if he writes, I'm going to obligate myself 100, so she has to bring in 125. She can't bring 100. She has to bring in 125, but that should be the fifth extra.
To where are we going?
So far, I said till the word dinner, sell of a dinner. If he obligated himself 100, she has to bring in 31 and a quarter. There are 4 dinim in a seller. So 31 seller and a dinner is like 31.25.
She's not giving 20% extra, she's giving 25% extra.
Right. So the way when it says a fifth, what does a fifth mean? It means what we would call a quarter, maybe. There's always chomish malava, chomish malagav. How do you chesh when you say a fifth? Does it mean a fifth after the addition, it's a
Right.
fifth, which is a quarter. What we would call a quarter,
Right.
25%. So if it's 100, so they would make it 125. So therefore, in order to give the real 100, you have to bring in 125. So it's saying the same thing over in different scenario. How about if he wrote that he's going to bring in 400? Another example, he's going to bring in 400 zuz. So you understand that's some Ishmaels. Okay, that's good. She has to bring in 500 because their 500 is really 400. When the chasan is what does these words mean? If she bought it's saying that if she brought in a state, he has to obligate himself a fifth less. It's saying the same thing over again. It seems to be redundant a couple of times. The Gemara says, back to the first part of the Mishnah, which meant if the chassan died after the father-in-law pledged how much he's going to bring dowry, so he could say, I didn't want to give it to the brother, to the Yavam. So that goes without saying that if the first husband was a Talmud Chacham and now the brother is Amoritz, so you can say, I didn't mean you, I meant the brother. You might say, you can't say that. It doesn't only mean Talmud Chacham, it means any other quality. If he's going to be whatever, handsome, rich, whatever other quality he might be. So you can't say, no, for sure you would have taken him also. No. I wanted to give to him, but I want to give to you. No difference, even if the second one seems to have more qualities, that's not a reason that he's obligated. He can say, I meant him and not you. Dinner, it means a few examples. It says a few examples of the same thing, that the fifth and the 1,000, everything is the same example. Tana Shuma Rabba, Tana Shuma Zuta, Tana Shuma Dideva, Tana Shuma Dida. It says big numbers and small numbers. Means it talks about what would examples said? Let's see, back to the examples. It spoke about
If she was going to bring in 1,000. He's obligating himself for 1,500.
that's by the money. And then when I talk about the shum, it said a fifth, and it gave an example about what was it, 100 and 125, which was 31 and a quarter. So that's 100, and it says about 400 and 500. How come he gives two examples about 100, 125, or 400 and 500? It's the same idea. So it says that it gives a small amount and it gives a big amount. And more soon we can explain what the different, why is there chiddush over there, and also talks about some of the Mishnahs talk about her bringing in the evaluation, and then he has to write how much he's obligating himself. Sometimes it's going to talk about what he obligated himself and how much he has to bring in, which is the same thing, but it's just translating it backwards. And the Gemara is going to soon say, we'll see soon the Gemara, the Gemara is soon going to say that there's a chiddush if it's a lot of money or a little money. We'll see that in a second. The Mishnahs over here, just to point out, we pointed out a couple of times that the Mishnahs that are divided, Mishnah Aleph, Mishnah Beis, and the Mishnahs that's up from the printer only. The Chazal didn't do that. Sometimes there are a lot of mistakes. Also, the way the Gemara divides the Mishnahs and inserts the Gemara in between, that's also from the printer. Sometimes there are mistakes. This seems to be one of the mistakes over here, that this one line over here, Pascal, Lachtis, Ksafim, Sila, Nasa, Shisha, Dinar, seems to be part of the Mishnah before. And then the rest of the Mishnah is a new Mishnah altogether. We should have, you can take out this part of the Mishnah and we'll print it later on. So even as we learn it, we're going to skip the part of the Mishnah and come back soon. So I just would like to ignore this part meanwhile, and we'll come back to it because the Gemara, the printer shouldn't have printed it yet. So we read the Mishnah, which is part of the Mishnah before. If she pledges how much money she's going to bring in, so each seller is worth 6 dinar. A seller is 4 dinar. So we said that 1.5 times the amount. So that's what's happening over here. When it was 1,000, it became 1,500. And when it's a seller, so it became, which is 4 dinar, it became 6 dinar. Same idea as before. We jump to the Gemara. It's same as before. Before we spoke about 1,000 and 1,500. Now we're talking about 4 and 6. It's the same thing. Tana iska rabba, but Tana iska zuda. We talk about a big business and a small business, a lot of money and a little money. And before that, we said the same thing before with the Shuma. We spoke about 100, 125, and 400, 500. Also, is a big deal and a small deal. And now the Gemara says, why is that? Why is the chiddush this way? It's necessary to say all the examples. The Tana iska rabba, the nafesh revacha, avaliska zuta, the zuta revacha imalo. You might think only when there's a big monies, so then there's a lot of profit. So then you have to pay 1.5 times more. But if it's a small business, so there's not so many profits, maybe it doesn't have to be given 1.5 times more. So it says, no, even a small amount of money, also, for every 4, you have to give 6. Yashmin and Iska Zuta, the Zuta Ziyuna, Avaliska Rabba, the Nafesh Ziyuna, Emolo, the Chiddush the other way also. Rashi seems to say that the word Ziyuna would mean like the risk factor or maybe other points, you might think that by a small amount of money, then he has to pay 1.5 times because there's a small risk factor. But by big monies, that there's a big risk factor. When he loses, he might lose a lot. So then you might think he doesn't have to add on 1.5 times. Much more both ways. There's no difference if it's a big deal or a small deal. He always has to add on 1.5 times. And now we go back to the Mishnah. Now, Rashi says Hotzah v'achrayis. That's what Rashi. Hotzah. Rashi says expenses of how much, expenses of how to invest this kind of money. I guess when you want to invest big money, so it also is the cost of how much you have to spend in order to get a good investment there. Right. Rashi also says achrayis, which probably means like the risk factor. He's taking achrayis. He's taking achrayis for all that. So it's a bigger money. So you might think that the risk factor is bigger. So maybe you wouldn't have to pay 1.5 times. And now there's a new Mishnah, which now is in red, and now we're putting it on. This is a new halacha, nothing to do with how much they made the deals and stuff, but for every mana that she brings in, every 100 zuz that she brings in the dowry, he accepts upon himself 10 dinner for the box. Which box? Who box? What's a box? We don't know. A kupa. Nowadays, kupa means kupa shel tzedakah, but doesn't mean that over here. So we'll figure out, the Gemara is going to talk about what box. Means he has to, besides everything else, he also has to accept upon himself to give her 10 zuz per every 100 zuz that she brings in. A dinner is a zuz, a mana is 100 zuz, and for every 100 zuz that she brings in, he accepts upon himself 10 zuz, which is 10%. What does he give? Where's the kupa? What's the kupa? What's that all about?
He's giving you 10%. What?
Of what? We don't know.
When?
Nowadays, kupa is kupa shel tzedakah, kupa gamal, a gamla, a box. So what's the kupa shel? What is it? The Shema Gamliel Omer Hakol K'minhag Hamadina. That it goes according to the custom. There's no set amount. Whatever the minhag is, that's what you have to give. So we don't know what's happening, and we jump to the Gemara about 6 lines into the Gemara. My kupa. What's the kupa? Perfume. She gets a lot of perfume. He's supposed to give her perfumes. So that's another halacha. The husband's supposed to give his wife perfumes. How much? According to how wealthy she is. According to how
she comes in with a kupa.
She comes in with 100 zuz
For perfume.
So he gives her 10 zuz worth of perfume in his lifetime. Not that he's pledging it after he dies. Now she's a woman who's an aristocratic woman. According to how much aristocracy, how much perfume does she deserve? According to how rich she is. So if she brought in 100 zuz, she gets 10 zuz of perfume. She brings in 200 zuz, she gets 20 zuz. She gets 10%. It doesn't make sense. It's a lot.
But she also gets to keep the money, right? It's her money.
The money he's obligated to pay her if he ever divorces or dies. That's the dowry. Otherwise it's his. And now it says that he also obligates himself to give her perfume according to her bracket that she came in. For every 100 zuz, 10 zuz, which is an enormous amount.
So let me say the words again. Chassan makabel alad. He accepts upon
himself. He obligates himself 10 zuz for the kupa shel b'samim, for every mana that she brings in.
The kupa of the b'samim were called mana umana.
For every,
on how much that. What is the kupa?
Kupa is kupa shel b'samim, perfume box.
And the mana.
For every 100 zuz that she brings into the dowry, for every 100 zuz she brings into the dowry, he accepts to give her 10 zuz of perfume.
Not the money. It's not how much the kupa is worth.
No, kupa could be no. That's not the way of saying the perfume. The perfume fund.
He brings in 10 to the fund for every 100 that she brings in.
Right, which is huge. Right, it doesn't make sense. Right? 10% of the dowry goes for her perfume.
Right, it's strange that it's perfume. What about shoes and jewelry and all the other things?
No, but how much?
I say one thing.
Right, right. Unless you're going to say that's included, it doesn't say that. Kupa shel b'samim. Maybe it means all kinds of
stuff. The other things he's obligated to.
He's obligated.
How much dowry does she get?
For every 100 zuz that she brings in. For every 100 zuz that she brings in, she doesn't have an exact amount of how much dowry. Everyone's different. For every 100 zuz that she brings into the dowry, he accepts to give her 10 zuz of perfume.
Could be that
Spices.
I'm sorry.
No, okay.
Could be maybe perfume include makeup.
Yeah, that I would say for sure. And jewelry probably also. Probably those things are included.
It doesn't mean every year. It means just one time.
Oh, that's the most question. It wasn't asked soon. I think more is going to be. Taisa says Tamu Amod. Let's see. First thing, says, "Well, it's kupa shel b'samim." Okay, that's one for Yerushalayim. If you live in Yerushalayim, then she gets a lot of perfume. The They're the ones who are
Befitting to the city.
okay. Varavashi, but we said that whenever she brings in dowry, the two ways to look at it, what they say and what he actually writes down. So when the Mishnah said every mana doesn't mean the mana that's evaluated, which is a fifth more, or according to what he actually mean, which is a fifth less. So that's a question.
Nishum would be.
Which is evaluated. Is that the money which is evaluated, which is the fifth more, or is the money which actually is coming in? What's actually coming in is a fifth less. So when he obligates himself 10%, 10% of what? Of what they evaluated, which is exaggerated, or what's actual? Intim salama mana miskabo. This is really another question. It's not sometimes intim salama sometimes means on one side of the question, on one side. But Taisa says the Gemara doesn't mean that. The question. It's not a question. Yom Yishon or Kol Yom V'Yom. First, we'll read the words that it says, and the words that it says, as Taisa says, let's point out Taisa very, very wondrous. All these things are very big tamua. What it's going to say doesn't seem to make sense. The Gemara says, is it only the first day? Like the first day, he gives it one time, or does it mean every day? Every day, he has to give her 10 zilza perfume. Can't be. Right. That's what she says. Can't be. And further, intim salam called yom v'yom. If it's every day, is it only every day of the first week? Shabbos Rishona or called Shabbos? Doesn't mean that maybe the first week, Shabbat brachas. He has to give every day 10 zilza perfume. Or maybe it means every Shabbos. And intim salam called Shabbos or Shabbos. Maybe it means only for the first month. Maybe the first month. Then he has to give a perfume every day. Or call chodesh or once a week.
Each week of the month.
Of the month, maybe, okay. You're right. Doesn't make sense. Nothing makes sense, right? What goes further? Oh, call chodesh for chodesh. In terms of call chodesh for chodesh, shana rishona, maybe only the shana rishona. Then he has to give her maybe once a month, or once a week, or once every day. Every year, he has to give us. How can that be?
Maybe a thought. If she has it, she doesn't. If she finished it,
If she what?
If she used it up, if she didn't use it up, then he says you have. But how is she going to? Maybe she'll use it up. He's saying that some cases we'll find an answer. But if she didn't use it, if she did use it, so then he would. Could be.
I would say no, thank you. Don't bring any money in because after a year I'm going to be broke. Buying you
perfume
a month or a year, whatever it is. You're going to run out of the money after no time.
But the Gemara is when it says these four different Toma, what is it? How does it say?
Intim saloma.
Intim salomar, to show how much a man should appreciate his wife.
Yeah, but it has to mean some words have to mean something.
Appreciate it means appreciate your wife.
He has to give her perfume. He has to give her perfume. So much perfume. What should he appreciate about her about?
Good.
It's talking about how much he's eligible to get perfume, and he's supposed to support it. So Taisus is a pshat. I don't know if it could be that the other pshat, but Taisus says that the case is surely only gives her one time. That's surely only one time. But the question is, how does he distribute it? Is it the one time he gives everything, and then she should figure it out, and she might use it up, or he gives her once a week, once a month, once a year? That's what Taisus learns.
I'm sorry.
And after he finishes, Taisus says after he finishes, so then he'll give her like anything else according to how much money he has, like the regular goes into the regular cheshbon. But this extra kupa of Yerushalayim is only a one-time thing that how it's distributed. That's the Taisus' pshat.
It's Kedai because it came up just before. It's Kedai. I think it's maybe just to say something.
I didn't see it. But I mean, prepare a tal for tal tweet. Shlo is tal tzrichos basim Yerushalayim. Lifnei reach hakdaros v'alei lareich lo hayu tzrichos les basim. Aval tzrichos hay lekupa shel v'samim la'adein abasar la'asher aseh l'pasher ha'kamatim. So it says Akasha that the Gemara says that they didn't need a perfume in Yerushalayim because the Ketores was so fragrant that anybody in Yerushalayim was affected by that fragrance. You didn't need to have perfume. Taisus says that's only for the fragrance, but the other kinds of things, like was mentioned, makeup and things like that.
But now, just thinking now out loud, it could be they kept all their makeup in the box. They wanted to have a good smell also.
That's why it's called
Right. They kept
all the creams and everything over
in the
there.
box.
Okay.
Also.
I'm going to be the Rab. My Sabita Shalagdim Ben Gorian, Shapaskula Chacham Abba Zuvim Lakupa Shabasamim, the Bobiyom, that means for that day. I'm not sure how to translate those words. That was what the Gemara before, every day, every month, every year. But she was very upset. That's one with Zuz. That should come to your daughters. And I can't understand what kind of perfume. Yeah, I guess if you go to expensive stores, you can get these kind of perfumes. I don't know. But she was like upset. That's all. 400 golden coins. And so he gave them a klola. In her eyes, that was a curse. They said halavai. Places points out that before the Gemara had a similar story, they didn't say amen because that's already when she was already, her husband died. His husband, even though he died.
Why did you say halavai?
I say that I just was translating what the amen means. Like, yeah, so we hold that. But there's more before that he already died. It's not a happy story over here. At the end, he died, and then the Yavam, she was a Shemes Yavam, and the question was over there, and they didn't say amen because they didn't want that to happen to their daughters, that her husband should die. But here it's just talking about she was getting married, and she got such a big psika for perfumes, so halavai they should get 400 zuz. But to her that was like degrading, just 400 zuz, 400 golden coins.
He was talking about her father passed away and she's getting from the Rubsha. For you it's befitting so much money.
Who passed away?
The daughter of the Nakim Ben-Gurion.
So the father's wish doesn't go for perfumes to the daughter. She doesn't have any right to the father's wish. No, so from the husband. That's what the Mishnah is talking about. Talking about the husband. The Kupa Shalom is talking about that the husband is alive and she's getting married, and the question is how much besamim she's supposed to get. Mamish the Mishnah, Kupa Shalom. The Tais on the bottom over here, Tais for someplace. Paskula here is less Tais was. Because the husband died. Even though it doesn't have to do with the chacham, they should go to evaluate how much money she's bringing in. But the husband said to the chacham, they should evaluate how much she needs, and they said 400 zuz. Then that brings Agada to Gemara about the Nakim Ben-Gurion. It's over time, but if everybody would agree, we can go further. Agada to Tanu Rabbanan.
There's another test right before that.
That's another kasha, but that doesn't change the pshat. That has to do with the husband, not about the father. Yeah. So we have to see more. Tanu Rabbanan. Myself, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Shehaya rochiv el chamor. Vayosei Yerushalayim. He was riding on a donkey. He was going out of Yerushalayim. Vayot Talmid Mahalkan Achrav. His students were following him. He saw a young girl that was collecting barley from amongst the excrement of the animals of the Arabians. The poor girl, she had no food even to get out some of the barley from the excrement of the animals. She was
collecting the seorim.
Right, the barley.
From the Galilee.
That some of the seorim were not digested.
Yeah.
And she was trying to get some of the excreted barley. Also, when Rabbi Yochanan saw her, when she saw him, when she saw Rabbi Yochanan and the Satva Basara, she wrapped herself in her hair, which probably means that she used her hair as a veil to cover herself a little bit. And she stood before him. She asked for food. Who are you? I'm the daughter of Nadim Ben-Gurion. That they became destitute. Even though they were so rich, she became poor that she even to find some barley, she was looking among the excrement of the animals.
So this was after, when was it?
Probably by the Korban. Amala Rebbe, lo. Amala Biti, Maman shall base Savir Chechanok. Where's all the money of your father? Which father? Amala Rebbe, lo Kidain Maslin, Masla, Yerushalayim. Isn't this the mashal people say in Yerushalayim? Melach Maman Chaser. The way to preserve the money, like the salt is preservative. The preservative of money is to deduct it. That means if you use the money for tzedakah, that's how to preserve money. And my parents didn't give enough tzedakah. It wasn't chaser is yes. Amrila chesed. Others have a different gersa, melech mammon chesed. That if you do chesed, you do kindness with the money, that's going to be the preservative of the money. And which means that my father my family, they had money, but they didn't use it for chesed, and therefore they lost their money. And where's the money of your father-in-law, which also was very rich? The money, we got money from both of them, but the fact that they were all mixed together, so all the money got lost already. Also, even though the father-in-law seems did do chesed. She said to him, Rebbe, do you remember that you signed on my ksuba? He told his students, I remember When I signed on the ksuba of this girl, I love him, that her father brought in 1,000,000 golden coins. A million golden dinner. And that's the kasha that if you go with the 10%, that was the kasha that the 400 zuz was not a tenth of the million. It should have been 100,000 zuz. Taisa says that the Chachamim said that she doesn't need more. That's enough, and that's what she was upset about probably. But anyway, it says that her ksuba was 1,000,000 zuz, 1,000,000 golden zuz. Chutz mishel chamiyah. That's besides what the father-in-law also added on. But the ksuba from the father was the dowry was 1,000,000 golden coins. And as she became poor, she didn't even have food teachers. She was looking for sorim. Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai started crying. Vama Ashvechim Yisrael B'zman Sheosim Shalosh Lamokom Ein Kol Uma V'Loshon Sholetes B'chem. B'zman She'ein Osim Shalosh Lamokom Mosran B'Yidei Uma Shvela V'lo B'Yad Uma Shvela or B'Yad Behemtan Shel Uma Shvela. That when Am Yisrael does the will of Hashem, so then no nation can rule over them. But when they don't do the will of Hashem, so then Hashem gives them over to a lowly nation, and not only a lowly nation, the animals of the lowly nation. Here she was trying to get the food from the animals. The Marsakasha, that's the end of the story. Now the Marsakasha, he didn't give tzedakah. The Nakdim Ben Gurion lovat tzedakah. Vatanya Amro lovat Nakdim Ben Gurion. Kisha Yosef Yibesel Shelabesa Medrash Klei Melas Hayu Matzian Tachtav Ubon Aniyim Ubakaplin Osan Meachrov. When you go to the Bishmedrash, they would put out melas. Melas is fine wool. The Gemara says the Mechavlin Osan Melas by the Kavunos over there, the sheep. It's a fine wool. People translated it as silk, but the hardest mistake from that Gemara. So they would put out fine wool under him to be like the carpet, and then they would leave it over there, and then he was able to take it and sell it and use it. So they gave a lot of stuff. Also, the Gemara over there in Gittin says that he had pledged whatever to support Yerushalayim for 22 years. They're in the Churban. It didn't work at the end because they burnt down the silos, but he was willing to. So it seems he gave a lot of stuff.
Not seen here is a verb, right?
Not seen it, right. They would spread out.
They would spread out.
The Gemara answers, he did it for his own honor. That even though he did the act, but he did it for, he's interested in his own honor, so it doesn't count. Either it doesn't count, or it doesn't count at least to be considered a preservative for his money.
We're giving reasons why he lost his money.
Right. Even though he did tzedakah, but he didn't do it to Shem Shemaim. He did it for his own personal honor. So either it's not counted, or
the daughter, and at this point the daughter wasn't married.
The daughter was. Why do you see she wasn't married? No, she had a ksuba already. I mean, she had a ksuba. She had said, "Do you remember the right ksuba?" She had been married, and he died. Maybe
punished for what happened to her father.
It doesn't say her personal issue. It says about where did the money go.
Okay.
The Gemara's not talking about her personally, but the money. Where's the money? So they lost the money because even though he gave a lot of stuff, but he did it for his own personal motivation. Even though he did a lot, but he should have done much more. So even though it's very, very impressive how much he gave, but according to how much money he had, he should have given more. As the, yes, what was fitting for him to do, he didn't do. He should have done more. Like the saying goes, according to the camel, goes the package. What does shechna mean? Load means a stronger camel, a stronger load. So even though he gave a lot, but for his camel, he's such a big camel, he should have taken more. Tanya, I'm Rabbi Loz Rabbi Soda, the Arab and Nacham, and Love, you see, I show you some Malakat Soam, you've been Talfi Susim, the Akko. Rabbi Loz Rabbi Soda has a similar story that he swears. The oath that he said is, I should not see the Nachamas Yerushalayim. Means, but he says in a euphemism, the opposite. Means, if this is not true, I should not be Zocha to see the consolation of Yerushalayim. What did I see? That she was gathering barley from the hooves, among the hooves of the horses in Akko. I said the pasuk about the following pasuk about her. So if you don't know, you beautiful woman, go amongst the footsteps of the sheep and shepherd your young. The Gedi means the young sheep, but Geviyosayich means your bodies, means you're even shepherding yourselves. Go amongst Ikviatzon, here Ikviasus, but to go amongst the animals, the footsteps of the animals in order to pasture yourselves. that they had to go amongst the animals in order to get some solim. So that's because they didn't give tzedakah as was fitting. That's why they lost their money. Or because they did it shalom l'shem shemaim. Adkan.
So it's just in different places, Yerushalayim.
And Akko, yeah, seems different times. Yeshkoch, everybody. Thank you. Have a good Shabbos, everybody.